What is up, guys? Vance Peterson here. I'm super excited to be starting this new series. We're going to have a church history little snippet series. So I'm going to be bringing you quick videos about church history. So I'm actually a master's student at Asbury Theological Seminary, and I'm majoring in Christian ministry. And I've been loving going through church history. And I just would love to share the knowledge with you guys and help educate you guys on church history. So below, I'm going to have some of the resources listed that I'm using to study, as well as website. And yeah, I'm super excited for it. But so this first video, we're going to be talking about Gnosticism. Now, as church history has expounded and passed through, we've seen a lot of different heresies. Well, the first heresy, pretty much off the jump, that came about and kind of around the 1st and 2nd century was what was called Gnosticism. Now, Gnosticism was this kind of mystical belief with what was called gnosis, thus the name Gnosticism. And gnosis was this idea of knowledge. And it was this idea that people had received a special knowledge to receive salvation. And the reason this was dangerous was it was dangerous to the church's soteriology. And now I know that's a big word. What soteriology means is theology of salvation. Now we know that there's one way to heaven through Jesus Christ and by his death on the cross and resurrection. And Gnosticism clearly spoke against this because Gnosticism made this openly acceptable message Jesus has given to all people. They've made it closed and only open to the people who have received the knowledge. Now, what was Gnosticism? Well, we talked about it was a special knowledge, but what did they believe? Well, they believed that all the world around us was basically wicked and evil, that the world around us was not made by the God we know. And they believed that it was corrupt, it was a prison, that our bodies are prisons that our souls need to get free from. And they basically believed that there was this creator who was transcendent. And it wasn't the creator who created this world, but rather he would send a messenger who would take the fragments of soul basically that are inside of us and bring us back to this eternity with this God. And it was clearly off. It was very, very off because it was mixed so much in philosophy and Greek philosophy and all these things, because we know Jesus created this world. We know that the triune God created this world, that this world is not, it has sin in it, but inherently creation was called good. And so we see already Gnosticism's combating the truth of the Bible. And it was really dangerous because it was becoming popular belief. And now, one thing that about this is, right, you got to remember Romans were all about higher knowledge and intellect. So this was appealing probably for Romans. This is my guess. So don't quote me on this. But I would infer this was probably very appealing for Romans because Romans themselves were after higher knowledge. So here's a thing that would give higher knowledge. And eventually, as we know, they said in Gnosticism that there would be a Messiah who would come. Well, who did they say this Messiah was? They said it was Jesus. And this is where things got really messy. Well, because all of creation's evil, they believe in what was called Docetism, which is this only appeared. It meant to appear, basically. So they believe Jesus only appeared to be a human. He was in the appearance of a human, but wasn't actually human. Basically, that God would leave, that Jesus would leave the body of the human every time, and he would only have it like it was a human puppet. And essentially, we know how dangerous that is, because that means that Jesus wasn't really a man. He only appeared to be a man. And so Docetism was quickly becoming evident that it is heretical. Gnosticism, Docetism, all this. And they go hand in hand. And then eventually, the Gnostics began to grow. And there was one man named Marcion. And Marcion was not great for the church by any means. But Marcion went on to say that Yahweh was not the same as the God of Jesus. Roger Olson and Justo Gonzalez talk about it in their books, and I'm going to list their books below. But they basically talk about how literally all this view of Jesus was that he wasn't actually human. It was this view, and then Marcion accepts it, and Marcion just comes up with this crazy idea that Yahweh is not actually the God of Jesus and that he's evil. And as we know, that's super, super demonic of a lie, because it's so evident that Jesus is triune, he's God, but it's the Son of the Father. How could the Son say, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father? It doesn't work. And ultimately, it became really messy because Marcion started his first canon. And this is actually one of the first canons of the Bible. It's literally, he removed the whole Old Testament, tried to make all these like books. He warped the epistles. It was a couple epistles of Paul. And this was actually helped lead to the canonization of the actual Bible, the Bible we have. And a lot of the reason was because they were trying to combat the heresy. And so all this is on the loose. Marcionites are the group of people who are following Marcion, and it's a mess. And then comes a man named Irenaeus. And Irenaeus was a powerful man, an early church father. And Irenaeus basically wrote this book called Against Heresies. And Irenaeus basically said in his book Against Heresies, he talked about this theory called recapitulation. And in recapitulation, he talked about how Jesus would have to be fully man. It's impossible if Jesus wasn't fully man and fully God, because only a man could reverse the effect of Adam. Essentially, only a man could be fully capable of removing the curse of Adam. Because if Jesus wasn't a man, then who could atone for our sins? And that's where that kind of the first, really, he starts to kind of lay framework for theology. He lays a lot of theology out. He begins to kind of make statements of, hey, like, no, here's why this is wrong. And he begins to prove it wrong. And eventually, this was a very strong factor in helping Gnosticism kind of come to a close. But that was some of the first heresy in the church. That was some of the first false doctrine and heresy in the church. And there's a lot more on it that you guys are more than welcome to read. I just gave you kind of like a snippet. Like I said, I want to just give you guys basic snippets. And I'll list right here, most of the information comes from Roger E. Olson and his book, The Story of Christian Theology, 20 Years of Tradition and Reform, and Justo Gonzalez, The Story of Christianity, Volume 1. That's where the information comes from. And it's really good information. They write really good books, give a lot of information on it. They give you a lot more detail than I give you. I just gave you guys little snippets, but that's where the information came from, as well as Britannica. Britannica is a great online source. I will let you know it is secular. So these are both Christian men, so they're going to give you more of a Christian lens. I will say Britannica is secular, so you got to be a little careful with some stuff on there, but it is a good source. Has a lot of accurate information and has a lot on Gnosticism, as well as lots of other stuff in the church. It's just an encyclopedia for history, pretty much. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. God bless you. Like, subscribe, and I look forward to the next church history video with you guys.